Swammers, welcome back to another episode of the SwimSwam Breakdown. As always, I'm Coleman Hodges coming to you from Brooklyn, New York, joined by my fellow Brooklynites, Sophie Kaufman, as well as the Dirty Double, Brendan Burns from outside of Philadelphia. Thanks so much for being here, y'all. It's been a couple weeks, and there's been so much swimming and swimming news in the last couple weeks to talk about. Again, it's April. I thought it was going to be a slow month. But so many international meets. Long course season is in full swing. We've had several trials meets. We've had national championships. We've had just tune-up meets where people are going crazy times. So we're going to get into all of that. But first, we're still stuck on yards. I'm still on college swimming. We just did a podcast with the coaches who came up with the dual meet tournament that will happen at Georgia Tech October 17th and 18th. And Sophie, Brendan, you guys know swimming. You've covered it. You've lived it. I'm just curious on your thoughts of this dual meet and the format that these coaches have laid out, because it's pretty different from your normal dual meet setting. And it's also just something completely new that we haven't seen before. So Brendan, as a former swimmer, NCAA champion, I'm going to toss this one to you first. Just when you saw the format in full, what were your thoughts on this new event that we're going to get to see on October?
Personally, I love it. And I think it's a big step forward for kind of adding relevancy, adding kind of interest and fan intrigue. I think it's going to be held at a great facility with a lot of really exciting teams, a lot of exciting swimmers attending. And a lot of people have criticized it. But honestly, when something this radical and this new happens, I'm really just glad that it's happened in the first place and we can work the kinks out as it goes along. So I think it's going to be a really exciting weekend. And I think a lot of eyeballs are going to be on it. And that's ultimately the goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sophie, any additional thoughts for you?
Yeah, I really agree. Like, I think that this is just so exciting, and we've been clamoring for change for so long that, like, now that it's here, I don't care if this first iteration is perfect. There are definitely things that, like, if I was in charge, I think I would have pushed for to be a little different about the format, but it is so exciting. It is so new. It's going to be something totally different that we haven't really seen before. We've seen a lot of other teams take on their iteration, Texas with their super finals. Like, we've seen a lot of different versions of a dual meet, but this is just something that's so radically different that I'm really excited to see how it works out. They talked a lot in that podcast about wanting this to be replicable pretty much anywhere. So I think that's a really exciting piece of it too. And I'm excited to see that if it catches on, the changes that other teams make to this format, or, if this group of 8 teams runs it and then it's like, okay, now that we've run it, here's what we can learn from it and the changes that we can make to keep making this event more exciting and attracting more eyeballs.
Sophie, I'm going to keep the ball in your court for this. If you were in charge, what tweaks might you make?
Yeah, I think one thing that really attracts me to college swimming is like the team aspect. So one thing that I certainly had a question about was the way that they've chosen to score out the meet. I understand their reasoning of having first place be 16 and second be 6, but that's just such a big difference. And I wonder how it's actually going to work out with these teams. There's a variety of different types of teams here. There are teams that score pretty regularly at NCAA championships and teams that are kind of just getting started in that realm. So I'm curious if that's actually going to play out between them. And, if this becomes a format that gets adopted by the top 8 teams at NCAAs all swim against each other, if that's a format they would keep, or if the scoring would look a little different for that type of meet.
Yeah, no, I agreed with what the sentiment both of you have expressed in terms of just trying something new, getting it out there, seeing how people react. Like, I'm really excited to see how this all goes down. But their priority and like what they wanted to focus on was like racing, right? And rewarding that top swimmer. If you win the race, like, you win the event essentially, which is interesting to me when you're looking at a team sport. So, I mean, we saw a lot of different things play out when we've seen a similar format like this in ISL. There was like, you still got rewarded for winning and you could even jackpot points, which honestly, I thought was an incredible addition to swimming and to like making it more fan friendly. People stealing points. But I also think it would be really cool to see more of a team friendly option. I don't know exactly how it would work, but yeah, incorporating more of your athletes so that if you have a deeper team versus a top heavy team, there could be a little more opportunities for excitement there. Brendan, I'm curious if you have any thoughts on the format or tweaks you might make if you were in charge.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure about the format specifically. I know a lot of thoughts have been shared about the scoring, and I kind of see both sides of keeping it traditional dual meet scoring versus the new proposed scoring format they had. Two things I did want to talk about, though, were kind of the aesthetics of the meet and then also the promotion by Georgia Tech. I would love to see something in the ISL. I feel like the ISL did a good job of kind of paring down to the lowest common denominator fan of swimming, where those of us that are in the sport, we know how it works, we know what's going on. But if it's something that we're trying to generate normal people interest, I think it's a big onus on Georgia Tech to kind of include some scoring tweaks or maybe learn some things from the ISL, and also how are they promoting it on their campus, because they have a massive facility that can totally fill that thing, get it really loud and get it really raucous. But I think it's just on them and how they promote it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, live scoring is something that we've talked about in swimming for a long time, and that like every major pool has a pretty nice scoreboard, right? Like it shouldn't be this hard to bring live scoring into swimming, especially for an event like this, where it could make it really exciting, where teams are getting knocked out in real time. So having that live score there could just bring up fan engagement so much. Again, we saw this happen in ISL, and I think if we could see that happen again and see that come back to college swimming, people love college sports, right? Like people go insane for college basketball. People are literal fanatics for college football. I mean, and many other sports in college, and I think swimming could be that way if we start including some more fan friendly things like this. But yeah,
another thought I had was that
Brendan.
Atlanta is a major metropolitan area, and all the schools attending are big time brands, big time schools. Maybe it's on the teams themselves that are attending to reach out to their alum in the Atlanta area. I'm sure every single school in attendance has at least a solid portion or a chapter of their alumni association in the Atlanta metropolitan area. So that could be another idea to get some people headed to the meet.
Yeah. I also think like the local clubs, like that's your built-in fan base. I know that like I think it's UNCW who makes a really big point about they have lessons, I think, at their pool, and like getting the kids to then come back to see their like teachers and coaches swim. So, Atlanta there's a ton of clubs around there. So attracting their interest as well could be really important in filling the stands.
I think that's one other topic that has been brought up frequently enough in this conversation of like, okay, how can college swim teams add more value, right, in this new NIL world where teams are getting cut, rosters are getting cut? Like, how can swim teams add value? It's like swimming lessons seems like the number one thing, or just like community outreach in the learn to swim realm, right? And if I'm not saying they should do this at the dual meet tournament, but it's something as simple as reaching out to clubs, reaching out to local schools who have maybe had swim lessons in their past, and saying like, hey, we want you to come, we'll give you a free t-shirt, or like, add some incentives to make it fan friendly, but also like kid friendly, so that they can, again, get really excited, and maybe get excited about the prospect of swimming in college, right? Because that's something that's a really big deal for high schoolers. If you start them young, maybe they'll be inspired to go home and say, hey, mom and dad, I want to take a swim lesson, or I want to join the swim team, want to go to summer league. It seems like there are a lot of outreach opportunities there, like you guys said, to not only get the fans in, pack the stands, but also add value to your swim teams and what they're bringing to their universities. Any other thoughts on this dual meet tournament before we move on?
I don't know if this is jumping the gun, but it's been brought up of the future of championships in college swimming, and a big idea has been the dual meet tournament. And sink or swim, we will see a dual meet tournament at some point in our lifetime for the NCAA championship.
Sophie, what do you think?
In our lifetime, I mean, I don't know. The question for me is whether it will be NCAA branded, because the NCAA, it just continues to devolve into further chaos with like each passing week. So especially as the House settlement gets delayed again and again. So it's really hard to say right now. I think it would be fun, and I hope so.
I will swim this out of pure optimism. Okay, I'll sink it. I think there will be a dual meet tournament. I don't think it'll be the NCAA championships. I don't think swimming will ever, unfortunately, get to a place where we have teams competing and people are okay enough with like teams knocking each other out like an NCAA March Madness situation. I just think that's the reality. I think swimming is still very much seen as an individual sport, and I don't think that's going to change in the next 50 to 80 years. Maybe it will, but I am swimming that we will see a dual meet tournament as more than just what this is, which is kind of a glorified dual meet, right? It's in October. I think this format is going to evolve, and I think we'll get to see, hopefully, maybe like a mid-season dual meet tournament, that replaces the mid-season meets that we see all over the country, or maybe even maybe replaces a conference championships. It'd be awesome if it replaced the NCAA championships. If you have conference meets and then you have the dual meet tournament, that's what basketball does. That's what many sports do. And it'd be cool if swimming hopped on the bandwagon. I don't see it happening, so I'm sinking that part, but I do think this format will evolve. Brendan, what do you think?
I'm going to sink it. You stole my idea a little bit. I was going to fill out the conference, maybe the conferences do one, but then I had another idea for the midseason. What if we get to a point where, we talked about it being an individual sport. What if we harken back to the days of the USA versus College Challenge or Big Ten ACC Challenge, do a conference all-star dual meet tournament for a midseason meet? I think that's a little bit more of a pipe dream than something that would concretely make sense in NCAA swimming, but that would be, I don't know, pretty exciting to get a bunch of big names together and have them go at it in a dual meet.
I totally forgot that the Big Ten ACC meet happened. I was there, and it was great. It was such a cool idea. It was a great format. I think, it's really sad that USA Swimming moved away from dual in the pool, because that was always exciting to see USA's best versus the European All-Star team or Team Australia. The last iteration of it, they even really switched things up and put in kooky events and weird whatevers. I think the scoring was a little bit different, but yeah, I love that idea of bringing in the all-star teams and seeing what that, professional sports have all-star games. Swimming could do that too. I mean, that's what dual in the pool was. That's what that was for college swimming. I feel like that would be a really fun end of the season thing, or maybe a mid-season thing, right? Maybe even it's better for mid-season because then it gets everyone more excited for the end of the season and the NCAA championships. But there are lots of ideas, right, that seem pretty good and seem like they could draw excitement. So, sigh. We'll see. We'll see if we get there.
We'll see what happens.
All right. Enough yards talk. Let's cater to our international audience. Let's talk about these long course meets around the world. We've seen so many in the past few weekends. Sophie, I'm going to throw this one to you first. Just what international meet have you enjoyed lately? What storyline from all these meets have you enjoyed lately? There's been so many top times in the world thrown down, and exciting races happening. What's one that stands out to you?
Yeah, I think kind of across a couple of these, like the most exciting thing for me has been to watch kind of the next wave of swimmers for their respective countries kind of rise. You know, you had Sarah Curtis tearing it up at Italian championships, and then that was really on display at British championships. You know, Eva Acaro had a great meet. She's already kind of established a name for herself, but then there were a handful of juniors on the men's side that were really making an impact. You know, Jacob Mills, the 48.0 and the 100 free. Jack Brown and Max Morgan as well, just missing the 100 barrier in the 100 breaststroke on a weird finish. So you feel like he was right there. I thought that was a really exciting storyline to follow. Plus you had, you know, the British records from Morgan and Evans to really like get the excitement going. And then the drama of the men's 200 free qualification, which still seems to be ongoing. So
yeah, super weird. We got to ask someone about that. If you don't know what happened, Matt Richards already secured a spot in the 200 free on the world champ team via medaling at the Paris Olympics last year, and then in the final of the men's 200 free, James Guy and Duncan Scott tied for first. And so there's only one spot remaining on the roster, and they went the exact same time. So we don't know who gets that spot. Sophie, who would you give it to?
God, I don't know. I think it's really fun the way that Aquatics GB announces their worlds team. It's different from the US. They don't list everybody's events. They just say like the manner they qualified. So they kind of got out of answering that question. I mean, I think it's really hard because if you're looking back at past results, I think want to give it to Duncan Scott. You know, he's an Olympic medalist in this event. He just missed the podium in Paris by like hundreds. So he's certainly built up that reputation. But then, you know, you watch James Guy's 400 freestyle at the beginning of the meet, and he went out so fast, and he's clearly, you know, refreshed entering this year. So you want to see what he can do in that event. I mean, it's kind of like a really good example of like why maybe pre-qualification isn't the best method, because Richards finished third in that event.
Mm-hmm. And I'm also guessing that like Matt Richards may have prepared it for this meet a little bit differently had he not been pre-qualified. But
For sure.
I mean, I think in that race specifically, he went out very fast, right? And I'm guessing he might have swam the race a little bit differently. But yeah, it's always funny. I feel like every time we've pre-qualified teams in the US, it hasn't worked out the best for us. But it'll be interesting to see what Team GB does about that. It'd be really awesome if they had a swim off at some point, maybe at like a staging camp. Just all right, winner gets to swim it. But we'll see.
I mean, it feels like that's what would have happened if it was like a US based meet. They would have been like, okay, 30 minutes, like you're back up on the blocks. Let's go.
Seriously. Yeah. We'll see how it goes. That will be a really exciting storyline to follow though, because both swimmers seem to be, you know, they were both 1:45.08, I believe, which really solid for an April swim. Brendan, what has excited you internationally over these last couple weeks?
Internationally, I've been paying attention to mostly to the meet down under, specifically Kaylee McEwen's still the best in the world, but she's going to a new training base, and I just wanted to kind of hear everyone's opinions on that. And I think it's, you know, an interesting move. I think she's kind of at the point now where I don't think it's a question of what coach is right for her. It's just a matter of what's right for herself. And if she can be somewhere where she's happy, comfortable, content, working hard, pushing herself, then she will be still the best backstroke in the world for years to come. But you guys might have a different opinion than me.
Yeah, I like it when athletes move. I think it's a good sign that they're taking care of themselves maybe outside of the pool or taking care of themselves as a person. I think change is good for people, let alone athletes. So she's going back home. This was her base before she moved to Griffith. She's been at Griffith training with Mel Marshall. And I guess for whatever reason, she felt like she needed a change of scenery. Her sister, Taylor McEwen, I believe lives where USC is, where she's moving back to. So she'll be close to family in that regard. I'm guessing that's pretty important for her, a big deal for her. The old adage, happy swimmer is a fast swimmer. And by that logic, she stayed happy for quite some time. And so I think this coach has some history with training athletes, but there aren't too many current elite athletes in this training base. I think it'll be kind of cool to see how Kaylee reacts to being like the senior level athlete for a lot of these, younger swimmers who are more up and comers. I don't think she's been in that situation before. I'm sure she's been the best athlete, but I don't think she's been the oldest athlete in her training squad. And so I think she'll be, kind of maybe the mom of the group or, the one who's passing down this wisdom. And it'll be interesting to see how she reacts to that. But so far, yeah, she's still lighting it up. She's always someone who seems very optimistic and just positive. So I don't really foresee this affecting her swims too much, but it's also interesting. I mean, she's had 2 insane Olympics, and it's like, you always kind of wonder how long an athlete can keep that momentum rolling. How long they can stay motivated, how long their body can hold up. But again, she has shown no signs of slowing down. So if she thinks this is the right move, then I do as well. Sophie, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. And I think with all of these types of moves, I'm often curious about whether it brings a change in like focus from an event lineup standpoint. We've seen her dominate the backstrokes for so long while kind of dabbling with IM. There's always been people wanting her to take IM. I don't want to say more seriously, but like race it more consistently at big international meets. That was part of the reason why the 200 IM in Paris was such a big deal, was because you had the top 4 swimmers clashing for the first time. And I'm curious about whether this change in training base also means a change in focus from an event standpoint. I think, she's certainly not the only one that we have that question about heading into this year. Even at the same meet, Chiccon's Italian record in the 200 backstroke, right? Is he going to focus on that now, especially since he was very publicly against the Olympic 50s? Is his response going to be just to focus on the 200 and 100 backstroke now? It'll be interesting to see. And, as Fort Lauderdale comes up, there's certainly plenty of those questions for U.S. athletes as well. But I think the move, if it's what's best for her, then it's what's best for her. She was 57.6 in the 100 backstroke. She turns out 57s on a ridiculous pace. So it hasn't, I think she's clearly doing well so far.
Yeah. It's crazy to me that of all people, a world champion in the 50 fly is like thumbs down Olympic 50s. I would love to, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I mean, I think I can see both sides of the Olympic 50, and we discussed this in length, on previous episodes. But I would love to hear Checcon's reasoning of why he feels like, Olympic 50s are a bad thing, just because he is a world champion in one of them. I'm guessing he would have a little more insight than feels like Summer League. But it was great to see him compete in Australia. Again, I think it's great to change up your environment. He's been training in Australia pretty much since the Paris Olympics. So for several months, he's been training at St. Peter's West with Dean Boxall and the gang. And, he turned out some great swims in Australia. qualified for the 100 fly, I think, for world champs, as well as the 200 back and the 100 free. And he's pre-qualified in the 100 back. So I think he will have some lineup decisions, because I'm guessing he also might be pre-qualified. Like, he might have the option to swim the 50 back or butterfly as well. So it will be really interesting to see what he ends up swimming in Singapore this summer. Yeah, I mean, I think those are the main ones. Russian championships, I think it's really great. As a swimming fan, politics aside, world issues aside, it's going to be awesome to see Russian athletes competing in Singapore with everyone else, because we know that they are some of the best athletes in the world, and we want to see the best of the best at the best meet of the year. And so we saw what they can throw down. Young sprinter in Kornev was 21.4 and 47.4 in the 1500 free. We've seen Russia consistently churn out top level sprinters, and he seems to be the next in line for that. Evgenia Chikhanova, the world record holder in the 200 breast, throws down a casual 220.3. That's awesome to see from her, that she's still very much in form. Clement Kolesnikov, not so good in freestyle, which was really interesting. He started the meet off great. He was 52.0 in the 100 back and 23.9 in the 50 back. And then I think he was like 6th in the 100 free. He like added over a second from his best time in that. So kind of interesting there. But if we get to see him racing at world champs again, again, a handful of these athletes, like, that excites me as a swimming fan, knowing that we'll get to see a lot of the best athletes going head to head.
Yeah, it was funny because I feel like the last time we had a breakdown, we were like, who is even going to be in the men's backstroke field? And like, we got the answer, Kolesnikov 52.0 and then Ollie Morgan 52.1. Like, it's going to be a great race.
Yeah, I mean, no kidding, right? Like, we've got them. I assume Thomas Chacon will be there, the world record holder. I think I think it's safe to say Zhu Jiayu of China is going to be in the mix as well. Now we just kind of figure out, like, okay, America, who's going to step it up? Ryan Murphy hasn't competed this year. I kind of don't think we will see him compete this year. Would love to hear your thoughts if you think differently, but Shane has looked great this year. Hunter Armstrong has, I think, looked decent this year. So it seems like we've still got some top tier backstrokers, but guess we'll see in a month in Indy. And speaking of, last meet I want to touch on, the Maria Link trophy in Brazil. We saw a couple NCAA standouts transfer their yards prowess to meters. Guy Caribe, 47.1 in the 100 free, vaults himself to up into the top 10 of all-time performers. He was also 21.4 in the 50 free. And then Stephanie Balducini, who swims for Michigan, 53.8 and 156 in the 200 free, both Brazilian records. First woman ever under 54 seconds. And from Brazil. So couple great meets for them. So excited to see what they can do on the world stage, especially seeing Guy ascend in long course. I think that was a big swim for him. All right. Any other thoughts on international meets for you guys before we move on? Yeah, I think we covered a lot of ground there. Again, hopefully our international friends are happy, and happiest long course season. We're going to be talking about Fort Lauderdale and the pro swim there in just a minute. But before we do, USA Swimming has had a few new hires. Greg Meehan is now the national team director. Yuri Sugiyama, who was the head coach at Michigan, is now, I don't even know. Oh, sorry. Yes. He was a head coach of Wisconsin. Thank you, Brendan. He is now the U.S. national team staff. It's kind of We don't really know what the difference is between his role and Greg Meehan's role, but they will both be working with the national team. And then we had Mike Novell leave the Fort Collins area swim team, or FAST, to go work with USA Swimming in a leadership role as well. So just from these hires that USA Swimming has made just in the last 2 weeks, still don't have a CEO. But now we have a lot of other pieces in place that seem to be pretty steadfast and trusted coaches who will be leading from the national team standpoint. What are your thoughts on these hires, especially now that we are 3 years out from LA 2028? Sophie, I'm going to throw this one to you first.
Yeah, I think when we talked about the Meehan hire, we talked about from an optics perspective, I think it would have been USA Swimming's preference to have the CEO in place before making all these national team staff hires. As we know, that didn't happen. And there was a sense when the CEO debacle happened, it was like, okay, well, there's still no direction for years out from LA. But with these hires, it seems like they're finding one. These are coaches who have a ton of experience, both nationally and internationally. And you're hoping that all three of these hires will help build back some trust with that subset of stakeholders in USA Swimming who had been losing trust in the organization. And while I'm sure that the CEO, maybe the eventual CEO, maybe would have liked to have some say in these hires, like on the upside, there is a direction. And that's also one less thing that the CEO has to do kind of immediately when they get hired, because this piece is already in place. And now we can keep moving as the CEO search continues and hopefully, gets resolved relatively quickly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think kind of in the same vein, like I think having a more coach-centric staff at USA Swimming is a good thing. I think that's what coaches and the member base of USA Swimming want to see, is people who can relate to them, people who know what they're going through and can fix the problems from that perspective, not people who are just coming in and trying to run a business. Right. But people who can interface and relate to them on a professional level because they have been in the same profession. And especially when you are dealing with the national team and preparing athletes to perform at a high level, like these are people who have been preparing athletes to perform at a high level for decades at this point. So it's kind of funny to me that the interim CEO has made all three of these hires. He made them in a pretty quick timeline. Again, 3 weeks, three significant hires, and three significant coaching players too. Right? I mean, these are not unknown names. I mean, these are guys who have been churning athletes, and even in the case of Mike from FAST and Greg from Stanford, there was a direct pipeline there where a couple of Mike's athletes went to Stanford, most recently Lucy Bell, who just won an NCAA title for Stanford under Greg Meehan, right? So it's like these guys have a good relationship with each other. They know each other. There's a cohesion there already. But then hopefully there will also be a cohesion between them, the suits, if you will, and your common club coach, right? Who is the member base, the backbone of USA Swimming. So it's exciting to see that the interim CEO is just like, nah, whatever. I don't care. I'm going to do what I think is best for USA Swimming and for our member base. And then when the new CEO comes in, I hope they have a vision and I hope they want to take control and do things their way. But I think this also establishes a bit of the culture of like, hey, we're going to do things the way coaches and swimmers want them to be done. And this isn't just going to be about the business side of things. And maybe the CEO can handle that side, but we're going to prioritize our coaches, our swimmers, our members. And I like seeing that. Brendan, any additional thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, we're on the same page here. Coleman, you worded it much more eloquently than I could, but I'm just glad that we're making these X's and O's hires. We're not trying to do some big brain, outside the box stuff that is kind of just not really proven to be effective for USA Swimming. So I'm really glad that even if there is no CEO currently, the interim is doing a wonderful job hiring these guys that really just want to swim fast. It's not about some personal diatribe or anything. It's literally just about we're at an inflection point right now of if we don't fix this, it may get worse, but we can also make it better. So right before home Olympics, and I'm really glad that they're hiring some really, really great people for the job.
Yeah, agreed. So seems good. Again, still waiting on that CEO hire. So we will see. We'll see what happens. And don't have a timeline on that one yet. But so far, it seems like we are putting some good pieces into place for when we do finally get a CEO at USA Swimming. All right, let's go back to the long course season. Fort Lauderdale Pro Swim starts tomorrow evening, and boy, is it going to be a good one. We've got just a ton of star power coming to the beaches of South Florida. Caleb Dressel, Leon Marchand, Summer McIntosh, Katie Ledecky, Kate Douglas, Gretchen Walsh, Reagan Smith. The list goes on. This is a highly sought after meet. As I said to Bob Bowman, when you get a meet in Fort Lauderdale, you don't really miss that one. And I think athletes and coaches feel that the same way. Weather's going to be great. You can go to the beach. It's an outdoor pool. It's a beautiful facility. It's at the International Swimming Hall of Fame pool. And competition's going to be fast. The last time this meet was in Fort Lauderdale 2 years ago, it was a great meet. A lot of athletes showed out for it. Brendan, I'll toss this one to you first. Just who you most excited to see swim, or what are you expecting to see from this meet?
Because I got the first pick, I'll take maybe the biggest name, maybe the one that'll draw the most eyeballs, Caleb Dressel. We really have not seen much of him since the Paris Olympics, where he had some good swims, he had some bad swims, but he recently also announced that I don't think he's with Speedo anymore. He's with a new sponsor, it looks like, on his Instagram page. We don't really know what he's been training, what he's been doing outside the pool, other than obviously focusing on his family life, which is wonderful. But it'll be exciting to see him in his home state in a pool that I'm sure he's raced in many, many times before. So I think that's the biggest name, and I'm sure I'm missing dozens upon dozens of athletes, but I'll let you guys do that. So.
Sophie, you got some dozens for us?
I don't know about dozens. I mean, you could make it dozens with the amount of Olympians and star power at this meet. It feels like everybody who didn't show up at Sacramento was like, we're going to be here. I think whenever you get Ledecky and McIntosh in the 400 free together, that's going to kind of be appointment viewing. But I think it's also interesting to see that Summer is out of some of her more usual events and in some ones that she doesn't focus on as much. She's in the 200 backstroke, for example, but not in the 200 fly or 400 IM. After her short course 200 backstroke, that's really exciting to see what she can bring in long course. And then, the return of Leon Marchand to competition after the Olympics and the injuries he's had. He's also in some interesting events. If he actually swims the 200, 400 free, it'll be really interesting to see what he puts up.
Just to give our listeners some specifics. So Summer McIntosh is entered in the 400 free, 200 back, 200 breast, and 100 fly. And that's it. So like Sophie said, kind of a pared down schedule, swimming some, events she doesn't normally swim. And then if we go to Leon Marchand, who Bob Bowman did say, we might see him swim some freestyle. But he seemed optimistic. It was like in a good way. So I'm optimistic that we will see him swim at least one of the freestyles. He's entered in 200 and 400 free, 200 breast, and 200 and 400 IM. So, which also indicates to me that like he was dealing with injuries, but he's better. Like if he's in good enough shape to swim a 400 IM and or a 400 free, hopefully this isn't the thing where they just enter him in events and then he'll scratch them all. But it seems like if he's doing okay enough to swim those, seems like he's doing pretty good. Seems like he's on the mend, right? And the injuries are hopefully in the past for him. But I mean, I think those are the obvious highlights. Just I think we're going to see some deeper fields in a few events. That's going to be really exciting. In the sprint free on the men's side, Santo Condarelli, Chris Giuliano, Luke Hobson, Carson Foster, Shane Casas, Caleb Dressel. I'm a little pessimistic if Caleb Dressel actually shows up to this meet. I really hope he does. We've seen him doing a lot on his YouTube channel, which I love. But he's also been playing a lot of pickleball with Bobby Fink, I think. So I just don't know how serious he's been training. And Florida does have a reputation of entering meets and then not swimming all those events. But I obviously hope we get to see a Dressel showdown with a lot of this field. Ilya Karun is also in there in the men's sprint freeze. And then, on the women's side, again, equally as stacked. Just looking at the 50, 100, 200 freestyles, Ledecky, Kate Douglas, Gretchen Walsh, Alex Walsh, Simone Manuel, Bella Sims, Claire Curzon, Alex Shackle, Katie Grimes, Penny Alexiak, Taylor Ruck, Kasha Wasik. Like, these are all Olympic champions, world medalists. So we've got some really great depth, which I think the last few pro swims have been lacking. So let's go Fort Lauderdale. Any other thoughts on Fort Lauderdale before we move on to sink or swim? All right, let's do it. We're going to finish up with sink or swim, and the first sink or swim is about Fort Lauderdale. We asked this at the last Pro Swim Series, and we saw one. Sink or swim, we will see a U.S. Open record in Fort Lauderdale. Sophie, I'm throwing this one to you first.
I think I'm sinking this. I think it would be an easier swim if Summer was in something like the 200 fly, for example. She was 204 flat in Westmont and seemed disappointed with that outing. But the fact that she's not, I don't know. I think some of the question marks are with the women's 50s, with Reagan Smith and Gretchen Walsh. What can they do? Mm-hmm. I think the U.S. Open record in 50 fly is 25-1-1, which is Gretchen Walsh's best from 2 years ago. She's improved a lot since then. That's, I think, what would be most likely. But I'm going to sink this.
I think it's a safe bet. Brendan, what do you think?
I'm going to swim it. I'm going to be optimistic. I just think that this is – I've been at this facility before. I haven't raced here, but I've done some fast efforts here. This pool is incredibly fast. I did a great job renovating it. And there's something about this pool that just has a very specific aura, as the kids would say. This pool has hosted dozens of legendary meets over the years. They have a board outside the pool with all the world records that have been broken there. And it's just a great facility that these swimmers are really fired up to be at. So I think the juices are going to be flowing here more so than at Westmont or Sacramento.
I like that answer more. I'm honestly torn at this point. I agree with Brendan. There's going to be a lot of juice at this meet, but I also agree with Sophie that it's not an easy path. There's not an obvious choice, right, for this for a U.S. Open record to go down here. My brother and I, geek out on swimming a lot, and we text about it a lot. When I told him about the psych sheets, he was like, "Is Leon Marchand going to go 3:38 in the 400 free?" Which would be epic if he did. I think that is one U.S. Open record I would love to see go down. Larson Jensen has the U.S. Open record in the 400 free from the 2008 Olympic trials at 3:43.53. I don't think it's impossible.
But Leon swam at San Antonio last year, the pro swim, and it's sort of similar timing, a little different and different circumstances, but he wasn't breaking U.S. Open records at that meet as he geared up for Paris.
While you're completely correct, Sophie, we haven't seen him do a 400 free, and
that's true.
What if I'm going to sink it. I don't think we'll see a U.S. Open record. I hope we do. But I think we'll see a lot of great swims. But it is May. And I think, internationals are just coming off of their trials meet if they're coming here. U.S. swimmers are kind of gearing up for our trials. if the timing was a little bit different, if World Champs wasn't so late in the summer, it's in late July, I would say maybe it'd be a little bit of a different situation. But for this one, I'm going to sink it, unfortunately. All right, next up on Sink or Swim, Cam McAvoy won a best time in his 15-meter swim dive thing. People had a lot of thoughts on that, which I think is kind of hilarious. But I know we've talked about suited records a lot since we saw the 400 free go down. I know we had a similar sink or swim last time, but people are still talking about it, so we're going to talk about it too. Will the men's 50 free be the next suited record to fall, especially in light of Cam McAvoy going a best time in his 15 meters? Brendan, what do you think?
I'm going to say no. I think I'm going to sink it. I think the record will get broken, but I think I'm pretty sure that 200 back world record's going down at the hands. I'm pretty high on Hubert Koch, so I think that's going to be the next one.
I think that's a great answer. Sophie, what do you think?
I'll swim it. Why not? I feel optimistic about it for this one. I think that all the discourse about the 15-meter thing was a little ridiculous. That is something that is very commonly tracked in this kind of thing, especially for a 50 freestyle. And also, if you go on like a Wikipedia page for an Olympic final, scroll down to the bottom, and they've put all of that information down there, even more than what Cam McAvoy was talking about.
Which is a new addition, which I think is awesome.
Oh, yeah, I think it's good. I mean, the 50 free is really hard. You're basically asking somebody to have a perfect race, and that is really challenging. Caleb Dressel holds the textile world record at 21:04. McAvoy is 21:06. So it's a big ask. But I was thinking about this one a lot, and I didn't have a better answer. I'm not as high on the 200 back as some other people. So I didn't have I didn't have a sink, and I think it will be this instead. So I'll swim it.
I think it's a good swim too. I think those two are definitely the two most likely to go down next. Hubert Koch's best 200 back is 154.1. So we are talking about over a 2-second drop, which I think he's capable of. With Cam McAvoy, we're talking about a 2/10 drop, which I think he's capable of.
It's a 50. It's way different and way more challenging.
It is. I mean, I think you're asking both swimmers to have a pretty perfect race. I'm going to swim it. I think the men's 50 free will be the next suited record to fall, just because I think Cam McAvoy could do it in prelims, in semis, or in finals, because we've seen him, since he's had this sprint renaissance, we've seen him go best times in prelims, in semis, and in finals, depending on the meet. And so I think he just has more cracks at it. For Hubie, it's going to be in finals, right? I mean, I guess it could be in semis, but like, I think he's at the point in his career where like he's going to go best time in finals. And so I think he will have less shots to do this. I also just think we haven't seen anyone go 152 since Ryan Lochte did it over a decade ago. So like, like no one has come so like, yeah. So no one has been within a second of that world record. Again, I think Hubie is capable, but like, I think he'll have to take a couple steps to get there. And I think Cam is kind of knocking on the door. He's already been 21:06. I think with a sensational swim, again, he has more shots to do it. I think he can do it. So I'm swimming this one. All right. And last on our list of sink or swims, Ahmed Hafnaoui was suspended for missing 3 doping tests until January of 2026. Sink or swim, Hafnaoui will medal at a major international meet again in his career. Brendan?
Unfortunately, I think I'm gonna sink it. He's certainly talented enough, but I'm unsure about where he's at training wise, competition wise. So yeah, I don't see it. I hope he does, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Sophie?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to think this one as well. You're really looking at 2027 Worlds or later. And the men's distance field is already so strong, even when you take Hafnaoui out of the equation. Plus, you're beginning to see the next wave in Joadi and Tanselli kind of already on the rise and looking to break into this field. So, given the question marks and the time length, I will think it as well. But it would be cool if he did.
It would be cool. I'm going to sink it as well. We've seen him have some incredible performances on the international stage, right? But just like I was alluding to with Kaylee McEwen, like I feel like it's hard to stay in your prime. I feel like it's hard to get better as an elite athlete. It's hard to stay motivated. We know he's had some mental health struggles throughout the last few years, and he was an Olympic champion at age 18 in 2021. 4 years ago. I would think it would be really hard to carry that momentum. And again, we saw him have an incredible meet at the 2023 Worlds, but since then he's kind of been all over the place. We haven't seen him have that consistency of training or of competition. And the men's distance fields are just blown up at this point, right? We've seen world records in both the mile and the 400 free in the last year. And with that, just a huge wave of competition in both events, as well as the 800 free, right? So I don't see it happening for him again. He's one of the best in history in all three of the events, 4, 8, and mile. But I think it's hard to see a clear path for him to get back on that podium on the world stage. So got to sink that one as well. All right. That's our breakdown for the day. Lots of swimming news, lots of exciting competition.